Hey kids, welcome to Bubble Club Week 14. I'm Phil, and I'm glad you could join us today. As we approach the season of Easter, we're going to be taking a look at the events in the Bible leading up to and surrounding Jesus' death. So today, we're looking at the story of the Last Supper. Supper. Then for our craft, we'll be creating our own magnets to put on the fridge. Stick around. Now, let's get into the story. It was Passover time. This was the Jewish holiday that celebrated when God's angel passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt and saved each of their firstborn children from being killed. This was back in the time of Moses. The Jewish people usually got together to have a special meal during this day, so Jesus and his disciples would too. Jesus told Peter and John to go and prepare a place for them to have the meal. So he sent them on a little scavenger hunt. He said, "You'll find a guy, he'll have a jar of water, and then you should follow him. When he gets to a house, then you follow him inside, and you ask the person who's there for a room. And then that guy is going to show you to a large upper room in the house, and that's where we're going to have our meal. So that's where you should prepare it." So Peter and John left, and they found everything exactly like Jesus said. Later on, Jesus and disciples were in that room having their Passover meal. After dinner, Jesus did something a little different. He took some bread and he broke it into pieces and he passed it around to the disciples. And he told them, "This is my body, given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." Then he took a cup of wine and he said, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you and for the forgiveness of sins. I won't drink of it again until I drink it with you in my Father's kingdom." Then Jesus told them that one of them was going to betray him, and the disciples got in a little argument about who it might be. While this was all happening, Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, I'm ready to go with you to prison and even to death." But Jesus tells him that in spite of what Peter's feeling now, Peter will lie and tell people he doesn't even know Jesus 3 times before the rooster crows the next day. To be continued. This was the Last Supper that Jesus had with his disciples before he died. That's why it's called the Last Supper in the Bible. The disciples didn't really know what was going on at the time, but Jesus was giving them a way to remember him and remind themselves of the hope that he gives them. This is the part of the Bible where we first see what's called communion in church. In our church each month, you'll see a lot of the adults take little pieces of bread and little cups and eat and drink them all together. This is like what Jesus did with the bread and the wine in this story. Jesus told the disciples and those who follow him to remember how his body would be broken, just like the bread, and how his blood would be poured out for each of us, just like the wine. Jesus was saying, remember his death, which was going to happen soon, whenever you eat and drink, and remember the sacrifice that Jesus made for each of us. This is why when we have communion in church, together as a family of believers, we are remembering Jesus' sacrifice for each of us. And we're proclaiming that we have a hope to be with Jesus again in God's kingdom. For our craft this week, we're going to be creating our own magnets. Here's what you'll need. The wooden magnet that you're going to be painting. Mine is a rainbow. A paintbrush, paint, some little jewels, glue, and a cup of water to clean your paintbrush. This craft is pretty straightforward, so I don't know if a tutorial is necessary, but I'm going to do one anyway. Before you start, make sure you have a newspaper or cardboard or something covering the surface you're working on. That way, any paint that you don't get on your magnet won't go on the table. Lay your magnet out, grab your paintbrush and your paint, and paint it. A tip when you're painting is to start with the lighter colors and then move to the darker colors. Darker colors can always cover up light colors, but light colors can't really cover up dark colors. So I started with yellow. Before you switch to a new color, make sure you clean your brush in your water. You might want a little rag or a paper towel to dry your paintbrush in between as well. And to keep things safe, I'm going to close the color that I'm not using and only have one color open that I'm using at a time. Okay, I'm done painting my magnet. This is what it looks like. If you want, you can leave it like this, but I also want to add some little bedazzlements to it. So I'm going to grab my gemstone things. Take some white glue and the gemstone that you want to put on, and simply put some glue on the back. Just a little bit is all that's required. And then stick it down where you want it to stick. I'm going to make some sparkly clouds on mine. You can also put the glue on the magnet and then stick the gemstone on that. That might be easier. And there you have it, your very own magnet. And you can stick it on your fridge or your stove or anything metal, really. I'm glad you could all join us this week. I'd love to see your magnets when we meet on Zoom this Wednesday. See you next time.